And it is the Isley Brothers on the Soul Train with the big and everybody's showing up digging. It's called Fight the Power.
This is hero time. One of my heroes, and I don't say that lightly, because I mean it's uppercase. Mr. Ernie Isley. We're here to talk about the Fight the Powers and how the legacy of the Fight the Power that the Isley Brothers made in 1975. I was 15 years old, so it was ingrained in me, but it was a record that I thought represented us. You know, they said, I try to play my music. They say my music's too loud, you know? And, you know, all the way to all the bullshit going down, and that spoke loud to me, and I didn't even curse at the time.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I ever heard a curse on a record.
I try to play my music, say my music's too loud. I try talking about it, I got the big run around. And when I roll with the punches, I got knocked on the ground by all this bullshit going down. Oh, time is through the way.
Where was the seed of that idea, or did all the brothers realize, yeah,
You know
this
what?
is all some bullshit, we need to say this? But that sounds like something that comes out of the younger team that says, look, this is what it is right now, we need to issue this.
Thing was, inspiration is all around us all the time. We were in California, Los Angeles. We had just finished recording the Live It Up album. Our mother and the wives and my nieces and nephews flew out to LA after the record was finished, and we were going to go to Disneyland for the very first time. So I was in a real good mood. This was going to be my first time going to Disneyland. And I got in the shower, and for some reason, I started saying or reciting something like, time is truly wasting, there's no guarantee, smile is in the making, fight the powers that be. I was like, soap went this way, water went that way. I jumped out and grabbed
You had to write it down?
pad while I'm dripping, and I wrote that down. I didn't tell the brothers about it. I didn't tell them about it right away. It was like 2 or 3 months. And when I did, I said, with all this nonsense going down. And Ronald took that into account. And when it came time to sing it, I heard him say, with all this BS going down. And I was sitting there like, oh, he's probably going to change that. And then I realized, Ronald, you're not going to change that? He said, change what? He said, no, I'm not going to change it.
Was he hot that day or mad or something?
No. It was just like a matter of fact. No, man. And I said, man, that's going to be, tough. Some people may not like it. He said, Ernie, the way the song is, you're talking, you're giving it a certain message, right? And if you say BS, you're saying what you feel. You're not chumping yourself off. Now, if you can say what you feel and it's embraced, wonderful. If you can say what you feel and it's not embraced, at least you said what you feel.
It was a serious time for black. It was a serious time in the United States of America, but for black folks in 1975,
Yes.
it was a serious,
Yes.
serious time of doubt. Because when white folks got it bad, there's a basement underneath that got hell going on. So,
Yeah.
but it signified a time that was kind of like confusing to a 15-year-old. I kind of got what the 60s was about at the turn, at the 70s, at 10 and 11, I got what it was about. But when I was 15 years old, the average 15-year-old is asking all kinds of questions anyway.
Yes.
And that spoke to me, Fight the Power.
Yeah.
Just 14 years later, when Spike Lee had asked us to come up with something that signified this movie that he was making about unrest that was in the New York City area and the borough of Brooklyn where he was from, and seeing that same hypocrisy, you know, his own thing was like, look, I got a radio station that's in the hood in the movie, but this is a rallying cry, and I need an anthem. So I actually was on tour with Run DMC, and the thing that kept resonating in my mind was like the conditions that he was speaking about in his film, and then also the climate of the particular time that was coming and then continuing in the hypocrisy. We were in the middle of R&B. That's Reagan and Bush. So, I Fight the Power, the sensibilities of the song. I knew I grew up, you know, finger snapping and dancing on Fight the Power as a 15-year-old and still knowing what it meant. But I said, you know what? Yeah, we could, the same sensibilities. We don't want to sample from the record, but what we want to do is carry the torch of the meaning yell and scream back at the hypocrisy, because they say, you know, we play our music. They definitely say rap music too loud. You know, and we roll with the punches and we get knocked on the ground with all this BS going down. And our whole thing is like, we always gonna be criticized for cursing on records, but cursing in the context of just what it is.
1989, the number, another summer.
This is music, my music. Fuck your music. Turn it off.
Fight the power. Fight the power. Fight the power. We got to fight the powers that be.
I'm listening to everything. I'm listening to the fight the power, fight the power, fight the powers that be. You know, the that be part is when it's manifested. You know, like what kind of monster is it? But whatever it is, once it's manifested, then you know how to begin your fight. You know, so you take all, you know, by fight the powers that be, you're gonna take all of it on.
Yeah.
Whatever that may be, you know.
You readied up for it too.
You're gonna take all of it on, you know, and courageously, you know, and with a sense of optimism.
I mean, because we made songs that were based on feeling, and we didn't think it was one of our strongest songs at all, but we said, you know what? This seriously is saying something to this film on what's going down right now. We know it's important, but Spike was also he was an added musician to that, because he's vamping it through the movie, 2-hour movie, vamping it like, and that was something that really seriously drew the connection between what we felt in 75 and what we had to feel in 1990 and 1989.
Yeah.
Because he knew that record too. So he didn't reject that the theme of Fight the Power, Spike, that's the anthem you're looking for. So that hit a bell with him, like, yeah, damn, okay. It doesn't sound like 1975 version by the Isley? No, it's totally over here. But it's gonna say the same thing.
She's straight out racist, the sucker was simple and plain. Motherfucking in John Wayne. Cause I'm black and I'm proud, I'm hyped cause I'm amped. Most of my heroes don't appear no stamp.
So yeah, hip hop is almost like its own archive museum anyway.
Yeah.
Our point in Fight the Power on the third verse, talking about John Wayne and Elvis. Now, you know, we give props to, once again, Elvis is in my household since I'm 0 too.
Yes.
But there's other records in the crates.
Yes.
So that was like a takedown on saying, well, in the United States of America, you know, at that particular time when I was 15, they're not gonna acknowledge this person as the best or this person is the king. They can't give a black person the king. And that was actually homage to the Isley Brothers are my heroes, not these people. And that's what Fight the Power, at least when it got to that third verse, It said that was the equivalent of all that bullshit going down. And that was all that bullshit going down in that particular song.
That was a tremendous hit in its own right. And it was important that you said what you said. You were calling out Elvis or calling out John Wayne. It was like, did you hear what he said? Yeah, okay. You know, I tell you something. There was a station in New York, and the guy said, we specialize here in rap, in hip hop, but with the exception of Stevie Wonder, Earth, Wind and Fire, and Isley Brothers.
Of course.
Those are the only three. Like a few days ago, I was playing Between the Sheets, and the phone rang, and the young man said, "Hey, yo, man, look, I want to say I don't understand why the Isleys decided to be singing on top of Biggie's song. You know what I'm saying? Because I respect the Isleys and all that and what they done, man. But like Biggie, he deserves some props too. You know what I'm saying?" And the program director said, "Look, brother, that came out in 1983. Biggie copied off of Isley. Isley did not copy off of Biggie. Oh, okay, man. Peace out," and hung up and then busted out.
Hey,
because you don't know. You relate to how you relate to it.
Well, you see how that comes from the miseducation of our music, and our history is in our music.
Yes,
if you de-emphasize our music,
it is.
The history is gone. And you could teach black history by default just with teaching the music.
That's right. In some ways you could teach American history.
Right, exactly.
Because of the music.
And where our households were our best educational systems because it taught us what the real deal is as we went to school. I mean, you and your brothers, man, was always like uncles and aunts in my crib anyway without ever seeing them.
You.
Y'all were like relatives because somebody's gonna play the record, it's gonna get played. It's like, yo, this is part of family. This is not offensive. This is to learn you, as they used to say. They'll learn you something by listening to these records.
That's a wonderful way to be able to communicate with people, and that's why in some cases people would prefer that music stop.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the ways where you shut that down and you can get some other sort of agenda, political agenda or whatever going, because the music isn't there. But thank God that the music is what it is. It's a spiritual thing, and it's a connection. That all of us can connect through generations. Through lifetimes. So they're gonna be listening to Fight the Power by y'all for as long as they got ears. It'll be rediscovered. It'll be rehashed.
Makes us love, makes us fight, man.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right.
Fight the powers that be.
Yeah, that's right, man.